very important shift to make sure that programs are evaluated. I love research. I'm a researcher. I would love everything to be a randomized control trial that takes 2 years. Given the speed of development, we think it's important to start doing rapid evaluations. But the turnaround time needs to be much faster, and the outcome variable needs to be learning. Does a child have literacy skills before the program, and does a child have better literacy skills after the program? And can we make sure that those things are impactful? Just very quickly, the great thing about the Indian ecosystem is there are many partners who have made progress on this and can show meaningful impacts. Actually, there are some very exciting results from Andhra Pradesh, from Haryana that show impacts on learning outcomes. But I think the evidence should be that the standards are learning for children and that has some reasonable measurement on outcomes.
Ben, if it's okay, I'll ask you a follow-up. When you say rapid testing, how rapid are we talking? What frequency of cycles are you looking at in terms of measuring?
Yeah, I can't say the partner yet, but in about the next month, we have been partnering with a group to evaluate one of the Frontier Labs use cases for tutoring. And the turnaround time from the beginning of the pilot to the end of the evaluation is less than 3 months. So there needs to be partners in this ecosystem on the evaluation side who are thinking about how doing rigorous evidence that actually can look at learning outcomes improvement as well as between comparison groups. It's a really important thing. We'll actually be launching something tomorrow, which is about creating kind of a new accelerator on this topic because it's so essential that we are not only measuring outcomes. I'm thinking about Education Secretary. I was in your counterpart in Odisha on Friday, and there's a long line of people. Everyone has their tablet. They're going to show Education Secretary, ma'am, all the wonderful things they're doing. But how can she tell the difference? You're very intelligent, but how do you tell the difference? Having it to be the standard across everyone in the room, that we have measures of learning, those have rigorous evidence, and it makes it easier for these very busy, important decision makers to have the data they know, both on impact, but also impact against cost. And I think the Indian ecosystem in EdTech is just at the cusp of getting that combination. Better evidence, rapid evidence, and things that government can actually use for scale.
Awesome. Mr. Vineeth, for those of you who don't know in the room, he spent decades as a stalwart in the tech space. And then in his next stint, it started a foundation called the Sampark Foundation, focused primarily on education. Coming as a stalwart in the tech industry, why did you pivot into tech? Into education? What problems were you looking to solve? Partly, if you could even share your personal story of how you got into this space, but we'll see how much time we have.
Okay, so let me start with a story. I had written this book called Employee First, Customer Second, which became a global bestseller. The New York Times did a very big article on it, and Fortune magazine came up with the top 10 CEOs. I don't know how my name appeared it. I made a mistake, which many people of you would realize, that I took the cuttings and took that to my mother and said, look, we have 3 brothers and I'm very competitive. So I said to my mother, look, if I was not born to you, what would happen to this family? And my mother was a teacher, school teacher, and she wrote something on a piece of paper. I was flying to New York that night, and she said, read it on the flight. I was on the flight with a single malt in my hand and opened the envelope, hoping that my mother would say, I'm so fortunate to have you as my son. And there is only one word which was written on it, and that word was enough. And I called my mother from New York and asked her, what does that mean? She says, you're a slow learner. It'll take time, but you will get it. And she explained to me that in life, there comes a time when you have to be financially independent. After that, you need recognition if you are a professional. But that doesn't give you joy. The joy really comes from giving and giving back. And therefore, when I turned 50, I quit along with my wife, and we cut a check of $100 million to set up Sampark Foundation. Now, my perspective on this is going to be a little bit more controversial, predominantly because I don't have as much experience as the gentleman and the lady out here. But let's look at a couple of things. Number one, irrespective of the amount of investment the government is putting into education over the last 7 decades, the learning outcome in government schools have only gone down. And I'm talking about from a limited perspective that, as I said, we work with 2 lakh schools with 2 crore children across 8 states. And I've seen the struggle in trying to get the learning outcomes up. artificial intelligence is the first hope that we can actually solve this problem. And we deployed AI through Sampak TV in 50,000 schools. There's a very interesting study which I will encourage all of you to look at. Haryana government did an assessment in December of 2005 across all schools, and they did it with two subjects, Hindi and math. In math, they worked with Sampak Foundation where we implemented AI in every school for every child, and in Hindi, they did without technology in the old way. The average learning outcome means the percentage of children who are grade appropriate was 36% in Hindi, and it was 78% in math. So that was the kind of difference which technology makes, and therefore that learning is very critical for all the people who are trying to look at how to use AI. Having said that, there is a concern which I have, given the fact that I come from technology. The question I ask you is, when COVID happened, and we had an antidote in form of a vaccine, did we immediately deploy the vaccine or did we test it on human beings? Today we are in an AI phase where everybody is saying AI is a solution. But what do we know about AI? We know AI is smart, AI is intelligent, AI learns on its own, AI lies, and AI creates hypnosis. And therefore, to put that tool in front of a child, we have to be very, very careful. And we have to test it before we deploy it. Yes, can it improve learning outcome? Yes. Can it accelerate learning? Yes. Can it do all the magic things which we are talking about? Yes. But have we tested it in front of a child, in front of a farmer, in front of a child, where we can say that person doesn't have the capability to be able to understand if the child is, if the AI is lying or not. So what is the answer? The way we are approaching that AI, beam it towards a teacher, beam it towards the classroom, and use the data to try. So for the first time in India, we are able to collect data from every classroom every evening, 8 lakh components of the data in terms of leading indicators of what the teacher is teaching and what the children are answering as a community, not as a child. And teacher is in control of that AI, and teacher is in control of the nudge. And that data is sent to BRC, CRC for them to correct the event. So AI has to be, AI is a use case. AI is not a technology. So therefore, my argument would be, is AI attractive? The answer is yes. But you ask for a perspective on AI, be careful. Be careful how you deploy it. Don't fall for the technology company selling you subscription, right? Just be a little careful. Our children are the most important commodity we have for our future for this country. Let us test it as we test the vaccine before giving it to them.
Sam, I have a fun question for you. What is the World Bank most excited about in terms of AI and education? What types of projects do you look at, fund, study, measure, evaluate?
Just to be clear, in general, we are not the types who become excited. It's just the way it is. That said, I do see AI is a huge thing. I mean, and my team members can support me on this. I bring it up all the time. I do want to see what our initiatives that we are involved in are doing in there. But what you heard from the panelists, what was implied, if not openly said, it's a tool. It's one of the tools. So you got to be clear about what you are trying to achieve, and then what are the bottlenecks, and try to solve that. So that's our angle. So I don't, we don't go into a thing saying, okay, where is the AI in this? To be provocative, maybe, but we start also with what is the problem and how you solve it. And the problem here is, by the way, 40%, according to government numbers, right? 40% of grade 3 students cannot read and comprehend a small story. That is huge, because that's the problem that we are facing. In 10 years, the governments, it's like that everywhere, will be in a panic mode. What can we do with these 18, 20 years old? Well, your options are very, very limited, because there isn't so much to build on. On your question more directly, what makes me enthusiastic. It's this individualized nature of learning, okay, that comes with AI. I think it's huge. It's huge for children who are lagging behind. It's huge for children who are vulnerable, children who are in rural areas. But the thing is, we would need to pair it up with systems that allow it to function. You can't simply give some, software and hope for the best. First, people need to have incentives. Teachers need to have incentives. They need to be paired. They need to be, the data issue came in big time. They need to be measured. And not only that, the community needs to be aware of what kind of learning levels we are looking at in these schools. The states, there are examples from, and that's the last point in this round that I'll make. The incentive structure to me is everything. In Latin America, in a number of countries like Mexico, Brazil, the central government agrees with the states on a yearly basis what outcomes are to be achieved, and then the fund flows are adjusted based on those agreements. So this incentives, funding, potential performance bonuses, and so on, I think that's the future. Yes, AI would play a big role there. I see AI only functioning in an accommodating environment like that, though, not in isolation.
Awesome. Coming into the next round of our panel, which goes from perspective really into practice. One of the things that's often being talked about at the summit is what we call as AI diffusion, where we understand that there's a lot of AI infrastructure already built, and the applications that need powering, but there's a certain diffusion level in the middle that enables those applications to work, to scale. Typically, in terms of examples, we'd call that as, in some regions, you need to deploy it through voice-based solutions, because mobile text-based interfaces will just not work. In some regions, you have to ensure that there's unique data privacy and security protocols. And so this is typically what we call as AI diffusion, which is, in our thesis, the missing layer to ensure that AI scales. So really my question to the panel in this next round, and then I'll ask individual questions, is how do we look at use cases? How do we really look at the practice of AI, specifically in education? We're excited about its potential. We feel it has a great ability to make impact. Now, what are we actually testing out, supporting, enabling, in terms of, and let's try and be as specific here. So if you know of regions, and if you're not able to mention partners, but the type of applications and solutions that are being deployed on field. Dr. Yogita, let me start with you. There's a lot happening in Telangana across all the schools and within the computer labs, but I'll let you share more about it. And we'd love to hear about how the government is looking at this and looking at adopting AI across government schools.
So I'll just come to the straight away to the question. See, first is the agenda which the state of Telangana took was to make everyone sensitive about what we mean by AI when we say the offshoots of, as the panelists said, it's a tool, or what do you mean by critical thinking, what is coding, what is AI. So from this academic year, that is 25-26, the entire curricula was developed as a use case. So from class 1 to class 9, curricula was developed. It was embedded into the regular syllabi, into the classroom session, and it was not a co-curricular or an extracurricular activity. So, anyone can wonder what a class 1 student will, require AI. But we know the normal tools, like what do we mean by a tab, what is a mouse, what is coding. Just the ABC of that was introduced in class 1. And only the mathematics teacher teaches class 1 to 5. Then 6 to 9, then we had detailed, like a syllabus, which will be taught by the English teacher, by the math teacher, and by the science teacher. And a rigorous training was also done to the teachers. However, we realized, the teachers are not alone. It's difficult for the teachers to understand at about 50, 45, like maybe they are not sinking into what is AI. So then, slowly we evolved a system in which the students who are doing degree colleges, the undergrad, the postgrad, they will come and help these teachers, they will be the support teachers. So that we started in a pilot. So one use case is to bring this entire curricula into and it has to be a part of the syllabus. It has to be part of the timetable. So when you talk about coding, you talk about model, it has to sink into electricity model where you have, A positive, B positive, so on. Second, we realized, as Parimalji was also telling about the FLN, Foundation Literacy and Numeracy, where more than half of the students in class 5 are not even able to read class 3 or class 4 textbooks. So there we partnered with AXTEP, and we came up with a small tool called as AXL and AML tool. It's a very simple tool. I mean, the more we talk, the more simple the tool becomes, in which, suppose if I am there and Ben is there, I'll put you superior, Ben, otherwise you'll scold me in the end. So he's able to read words, and I'm not able to read even an alphabet. The tool will adjust with me, okay? It will tell me A, B. For him, maybe it will read sentences. So it's like an adaptive, it's a voice-over tool. And surprisingly, in the last about 8 months, we realized 42% of the students actually improved using that tool. And mind it, I'm talking about the students who were not proficient in reading the words, the sentences, the fluency, and so on. So it's a typical use case of in Telugu language, English, and mathematics. So that's the second use case, I think, so I can say. The third, in fact, many stalls are there about the PAL, the personalized adaptive learning in STEM. So we went with Khan Academy, and in fact, CSF as a partner came forward for ensuring this FLN with AXTEP. So PAL we introduced for the STEM. That means all the children who are from class 6 to class 12 will be having personalized services through Khan Mingo tool of Khan Academy, or as such customized learning, and even a co-pilot for the teacher. So then we come to a higher education. Then there we have a skilling app, and then we have a career app, we have a counseling app. Overall, we have an app. I believe any, research or any kind of a screening which is based on Q&A is a thing where AI can really do wonders. So these are a few of the use cases. I thought not to take much time, but the studies within this 1 year actually has shown that there are students who were star have become superstar, students who did not have confidence in them, they are having confidence, and the students who really thought that they are left out in the class and coming to the class and going back home doesn't make difference. We realized absenteeism has reduced. These are in fact the intangible effects of how AI can really help. And not only this, last I'll take, and then the teacher will know, like we had, when I said 42% of the students improved in FLN, but there were 20 to 30% of the students, even when exposed to the tool, actually did not improve. So then we came to know that these are the students who require one-to-one remedial. So you have a very targeted kind of approach, because normally in a class, the teacher actually takes a midline. The superstar children don't find the class very exciting, and the students who actually need some support also don't. So the teacher normally modulates between like the superstar can understand and little, the person. So that way, FLN and PAL really help the child to come to the benchmarking learnings. I think so that's really some change and a revolution which AI can bring. And then the students who are star actually can become superstar using these tools. And as a secretary taking care of the government school, where mostly the students from the poor households, disadvantaged, backward, they come. So why should I not allow, as a government, why we should not allow these students also to use those tools, which already the students, perhaps they are rich, perhaps their school is giving them, are exposed to. So that is where, when we say the social empowerment, so that this AI tools should not deepen the divide, right? And it should not leave those children who cannot afford. So I think so there is where Ben will help us, CSF, AXTEP will help. And also, in fact, as you had very rightly said, like it is not that I really want to do something in AI because it's the new gen's word. No, this is my challenge. I need a tool for this. I think so from there we should start. Like FLN, we know we are struggling, we need a tool for that. And a lot of things are there. In fact, I per se, many a times I say, actually it should be the pro bono organizations. I don't know how you will take my statement. And the people who are not for profit should venture into AI for the students, because students are not a commodity. Because we cannot distort the pedagogy. We cannot distort the soul of the learning, where the teacher has to be at the center stage and the tools revolve around the teacher, student, and the class interaction.
Thank you. Mr. Vineet, you mentioned about testing. So if we could go further there, what do you test for? How do you then test and actually move into deployment? And how's it going along the way?
I think that's a great question, and we need to be a bit careful. I come from a technology background, but I'm a bit cautious about blind testing, as I would call it. Let us approach this subject from two sides, right? Let us approach from my past, which is IT. And all of us have predicted, most people, that 50% of the skills which are currently used in IT are not going to be required anymore. And therefore, the number of people who are going to be without the job is going to be very large. At the same time, we have predicted that because of AI, the number of new skills which are going to be required is going to be 100% more than the old skills which are going to go away. So net new, there will be more jobs. Now, the question for education is the fact, if that's the scenario in the industry, that the old skill, which is largely knowledge-driven, is not going to be relevant. New skill, which is problem-solving, imagination, being able to think about a solution which you had not thought about just because of an existence of technology. What is the skill which we need in an education system? So therefore, if in the education system we start solving the numeracy and literacy problems, which is mandatory condition for us to solve, I think we are not using the AI ability enough. And therefore, we need to think about what is the right pedagogy for us to be able to create what I call employable youth. Right now, we are creating a lot of non-employable youth. And give you a sense that the reason these non-employable youth in the education system was employable predominantly because in 6 months' time in IT, we could make them employable. That's not going to happen now, because the kind of skills which you need in future is not going to be possible in 6 months' time. And that is the reason Indian IT or global IT is not going to make that investment. We need to make that in education. So what is that investment? The investment is that how do we teach them problem-solving skills? How do we teach them reimagining skills? And therefore, there are two experiments which we have launched, which is very interesting from a pedagogy point of view. And all this is AI research, right? So this is not credit to Sampak Foundation. It is credit to training and retraining our SLM to be able to come up with the right thing. So we came up with what we call a half story. And therefore, we tell a story to a child and stop it midway and tell the child to imagine what would happen next. And you have to go to these 2 lakh schools to see, the kind of noise it gets created. Now, that is the first time we've said this is the imagination skill. The second, we created 2 characters, like one is called Chutter, another is called Putter. And they asked bloody 10,000 questions to the teacher. And the AI engine, depending on the kind of responses which are coming from the teacher, provokes them to ask more and more questions. So now slowly the character of the organization, character of the class changes, where everybody was only listening to the teacher and suddenly they start asking the question. Now, as we are walking this direction and we are making more and more investment using AI, not only to come up with what we call Sahi Kram, Sahi Dhang to teach literacy and numeracy, but how do we bring these new life skills alive? And there are many experiments which we are doing. Now let's go back to testing. Now that is a big problem. That the only testing which we can do is the old numeracy and literacy, whether I gave you example 76%, 36%, but that is passé. I think that is not going to help us. If you really come from an IT industry, which I come from, the kind of problem we are going to face is huge. And therefore, the education system in our schooling and in our college has to wake up. And I don't have an answer of how to test whether we are making these children ready for future. If somebody in the audience or somebody has that capability of testing non-numeracy and literacy skills, but life skills which are relevant for tomorrow, I think that will be a path breaking. And if you can use AI to do that, I'll be the first to adopt it and free of cost, from an NGO point of view.
Thank you. Ben, how's the Gates Foundation looking at use cases? Not just you, my guess is that a lot of this room would be quite familiar with the Indian landscape. But so touch on some of the Indian landscape, but also give us a global flavor of what's happening in Africa and other parts, given that you have a global lens to education adoption.
Yes, I'll try and be very specific. So I'll talk about 3 different use cases. One is the problem that happens more in Africa than it does in India, where there's very large classes and you're struggling to assess learners. So actually in Rajasthan, Wadhwani AI has a tool that is a simple reading assessment tool. So it gives, the child reads a story. You said that a certain percentage of kids can't read even in 5th grade. The child would read a story, the tool would assess whether or not the child is correct or wrong and give feedback to the child and then feedback to the teacher. And if this was my class and all of you have done that assessment, then there will be some patterns on particular challenges in Hindi that the children were struggling with that then would have some implications for me as a teacher to reteach. Given so many states now have structured pedagogy programs, it could actually give feedback to the state about what sort of things that they would be able to provide. So that's a very specific example. We are actually talking with Wadhwani and Pratham and other partners on taking similar learning assessment tools and applying them in a couple of countries in sub-Saharan Africa. We've already started with Pratham International in Kenya. Same idea, Kiswahili, which is the major language in East Africa, and trying to help make that happen in a few countries. Second use case is on personalized adaptive learning. You already mentioned PAL. So 2 studies that have come out relatively recently. One is in Andhra Pradesh from Michael Kramer, did the external evaluation. Basically, kids in this convergenius program have twice as much learning in 1 year as those who didn't go through the program. Now, you have to read the fine print. That requires quite a bit of additional technical support in the learning labs so the children had enough time on task. Second one is Khan Academy has a pilot that just had its first evaluation results, similar additional year of schooling with in participation, but also similar additional technical support from an additional officer. So there is promise for personalized adaptive learning. The thing to grow on as we think about that use case is make sure that personalized is affordable. Because sometimes right now we have personalized adaptive learning, but it requires somebody supporting quite a bit, which is fine for now, but at scale would be a big problem. The third use case, maybe my favorite of the 3, is about AI for teachers. How does AI make my job easier? And in some states where you don't have the instructional support officer ratio down to the child, that's very easy for that coach to come and observe the teacher quite frequently. How can AI provide coaching? I was actually trained as a teacher coach, and I love going to the classroom and observing a lesson and saying, okay, teacher, you did well in these 3 areas, but these 2, you could do better. Maybe now as you're listening to me, you're thinking of things you want to give me, coach, to improve my performance. But could AI do the same thing? And so Mahdi Foundation and Tamil Nadu is working on a teacher coaching app, as well as Central Square Foundation is working in a few contexts right now on things that can actually listen to the classroom and give actionable feedback that can improve. I'm quite excited about that because I'm a big believer in teachers and the idea that we need our existing teachers to be better, and coaching could help on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Sam, if I can be slightly controversial. So, governments have to choose, and there'll be so many solutions out there, and they have to figure out what would serve my population of students best. How does the World Bank work alongside governments in selecting use cases that really do work, that are measurable, deployable, affordable? So it's partly, does it work, and then can I afford it, like Ben rightly said. So how does the World Bank look at that? The world, and in order to really work with the government, the foundation of it is trust. And so thinking about it from a trust point of view, if I do invest this next 100, 200 crores of a budget towards this AI solution, how far will it take the learning outcomes of my state or country?
Look, our job is to bring in, yes, some funding in countries like India, by the way, that doesn't mean much. It is such a small portion of what's going on in the sector that, so you can't really simply get into building, I don't know, 50,000 schools. It's a drop in the bucket. You wouldn't do that. So one of the things we try to do is to see how we can be a bit more impactful. Yes, one can do good. I'm not undermining it at all, but what we try to do is to kind of, well, basically punch over our weight. That's what it is, right? Now, among those concepts, a very attractive one is, and what the secretary actually, in her example, it was clear, the autonomy of the schools, for example. So I'm giving this example because it's such a big deal. You are doing AI, right? So you could try to prescribe. You could ask the World Bank, as if we would know. We wouldn't, by the way, which AI solution is the one. How do I know? I mean, even if I knew it, 3 weeks later, probably it would change anyway. So instead of that, what we try to get into is those concepts like that. I mentioned incentives in one, the ability of the schools. There's a huge literature there. The private schools tend to be more efficient. It's because they can make more decisions. So if we could bring in a flavor of that, as her example suggested, right? So AI-based, this particular tool works for these students, but not so much for these. So if the schools can make those adjustments, because one of the things that we haven't discussed is another huge insight from the literature, by the way, is children should really do a better job in choosing their parents. So basically the impact of parental characteristics on outcomes of children, right? We didn't even talk about that. So imagine you are doing any kind of intervention in a setting where there is huge variety in how the home environment is. You have to give some flexibility to the schools and some authority to handle that, right? So the types of things that we would emphasize is, to me, by the way, this data and monitoring business is at the heart of everything. Implementation of AI and anything else. Let me just give one example here. I think it is Uganda or something where they simply posted how much a school is supposed to be getting from the government. How much money? Because 80% of the money was not flowing to the schools. It was some of them set in the district, some of them God knows what. After that, once the community and the schools were very clear, oh, this is the amount we are supposed to be getting, actually things changed. An example here is if the schools had learning outcomes publicly announced and posted in there, right, yearly, that is the fundamental building block of everything else you are talking about to me, because then you can build in, yes, monitoring, assessments, putting in incentives, you can do everything. If you don't have that, what do you do?
Given that I see a red sign on the clock already, here's what I want to do. The future is uncertain, and so let us summarize it into 2 lines. How do you see the next 1 year, and the maximum I'd really want to go, if it's beyond 1 year, is 2 years. How do you see the next 1 to 2 years of AI? And let me now make the very hard ask of summarize it in a 2-line statement. If you were under the fire test of saying 2 lines, what does the next 1 year of AI in education look like? Whoever's ready to go first. Mr. Vineeth.
My 2 lines is the bubble of expectation of AI will bust, and then the real AI implementation will begin.
Is anyone happier than that?
Actually, I copied this from an earlier session. In health, they concluded that it's almost impossible to predict the future. So what we have to do is invest in the building blocks and let the private sector bloom.
Yes.
I'll say 2 sentences.
Yep.
Rapid change, evidence required.
The transition, I think so, will be smooth because many use cases will come, and the use cases will show if the learning outcomes are really benefited. it will be for an AI. And if it is the other way, the system will take care.
Yeah. I want to be kind to the audience, and I did promise that. So if we would have a maximum 3 questions. So I saw one here, and just if we can be fair, maybe one on that side. We're a small room, so if it's okay, if just stand up and ask your question, and maybe one person from the panel would like to respond to each one. So go ahead.
Thank you, everyone. The discussion was great. My question is that I've been working with Pratham Education Foundation and working with a lot of teachers. So, some of the problems that they always had is, ever since the technology came, they were never ready for the technology. They are still adapting to the computers, digitizing the information, because we need a lot of data to be uploaded from there, and they are the last mile manpower that we have. So when AI comes,
Keep it short.
will it become something like they have 10, 15 applications to manage, or there will be some elements that AI is taking care of independently, so they don't have to juggle between the manual as well as the digital aspects of the work and not getting efficient time to teach.
Ben, given that you guys work with Pratham already, would you want to take a shot at that?
I think there was an analysis, this is from the US, so it's not exactly the same as India, but that there's probably 60% of a teacher's actual workload are things that are external to teaching. And to me, the main thing we want to keep is the brain power of that teacher to make that internal classroom decision. Do I follow up on this response? Do I turn to this child? The genius of teachers are on those things. Couldn't AI help with the preparation, with the assessment, with the planning, and simplify the brain power and the space to make it much easier for the teacher to focus on instruction? That depends on a lot of choices. Right now, I don't think that is the case. I think there's a proliferation of apps. I think some states in the Nipun Bharat work have been better at making sure that these things all need to become into the one thing that the teacher works on. But right now, that's not the case across the country. So it's a combination of policy as well as incentives to make that more likely. Otherwise, we will lose some of the power that AI might be able to bring to reduce some of the friction and costs that might get in the way. Thanks.
Awesome. Man in second row.
I'm Deepak Patil from Pratham Education Foundation. We work in the teachers' capacity building as well as designing the different projects like foundational literacy and numeracy. Moving forward, because AI is a big thing, how we can kind of design a project which can kind of benefit the kind of beneficiary, that is the students in a broader way, considering the following constraint. One of the constraint, if I'm talking about the FLN per se, if we talk about pedagogies, then pedagogy should be activity-based pedagogies. We should also take care of the screen time, especially for the grade 1 to 4. If I'm talking about the benefits of the AI, one of the great benefits is that that is kind of the now we can provide the
Sorry,
personalized
I'll cut you off.
feedback.
If you could just summarize the question, if that's okay.
And of course, the challenges that we find in the government schools, like we don't have the proper infrastructure, maybe the connectivity, it's not at the scales at the remote, at the last mile. So how kind of design a project considering all these challenges, opportunities together?
Yeah. Dr. Yogita.
See, first of all, one should have a clarity as to what is the challenge in your FLN. So whatever is your challenge, first you have to have that clarity, what is the challenge. See, whatever you have spoken till now is challenges which will be there for another 10 years, for 20 years also, when I join the service or when I retire. So first, that clarity one has to know, what is my challenge? Now, how do I build the challenge? So AI can only be an addition to what is available. It can never replace the teacher. So if we think that FLN tool will come, we will put the child onto the FLN tool and it will take care. It's not like that. So what is your challenge and what is the tool available in the ecosystem, that you have to do the matching batching. And then you have to start. See, now, in fact, the other day when we were at the Bodhan AI launch, I realized out of the 122 stalls, almost 50% stalls were on PAL. And almost some 20-25 were on this FLN by voice or all. And then what the gentleman was asking. So any tool which reduces the burden of the teacher and increases the efficiency of a teacher. Any tool where the student's learning outcome is very good, I think so, that should be your main currency to pick a tool.
Awesome. There was somewhere on that side. Yeah. I'm going to be mean, but a 10-second question and then a 1-minute response, and we'll do this.
Yeah, hi, thanks. This is Dave from EI. This is a question to Dr. Piper. Like you mentioned the need for the quick pace of outcome measurement, right? So does this shift in this pace of outcome measurement need to be met or backed by like a shift towards a common framework of AI-aware learning indicators, which need to be now be developed and also standardized? Is this something that we should be looking at, and is there already work being done on this?
Maybe you should think about it. But I do think there is a greater standardization here in India around how to measure learning. And so I think being able to have standards on what, the Foundational Learning Survey is coming up right now. I think Parak is doing that. So there's some progress on what the learning outcomes are. But your AI-enabled indicators, that doesn't exist. We actually have, because we think like you, we have a partnership that's just launching right now that is trying to get alignment and agreement on what the standards are for evaluation, and then and actually making it easy to do these evaluations. So that doesn't exist, but there does need to be some combined work on this. The session I just came from was from the Global AI Learning Alliance, which was launched today, and it's to bring together the frontier labs, Google, Anthropic, OpenAI, the partners from India and globally, the funders, and then the implementers on the ground together to kind of coordinate on these kind of issues. A lot of work ahead, but that issue of how do we agree on the standards, I think is really important. Thanks.
Awesome. In case you didn't know, this morning, the AI Impact Summit announced the Education Compendium, which is a global repository of use cases from around the world. You should go and check it out. Ekstep was very privileged to co-author that along with the Central Square Foundation. But that being said, thank you so much to my panelists for the wonderful conversation. We have a small gift for you from our side, and cameraman, you ready? We'll take a quick photograph, and then we need to vacate this room for the next session. So thank you once again to all of our panelists. Benjamin Piper, a quick gift for you. Dr. Yogita. Mr. Sam. Mr. Kim. Mr. Vineeth. If you could take a quick group photograph, and we're good to